American States OAS called on regional leaders to strengthen democracy, citing corruption and the improper influence of money in politics. The organization has asked for a more decisive approach to addressing these areas of concern. OAS Secretary General Miguel Souza said allegations of corruption have increased the separation and distrust of citizens towards politics and, at the same time, have weakened democratic systems. With elections on the cards in Grenada and other countries in the hemisphere, the issue is once again center stage, especially as Caribbean people wait with bated breath to see just who will take over the White House in 2016. St. George's University Professor Damian Greaves says the issue was created by politicians and should be solved by them.
By the failure of the system to allow democracy to prevail in some form. Now let me explain that to your viewers, because democracy is not simply people going and dipping their fingers, their index fingers, if they have index fingers, into the red ink and putting that little cross. It must go beyond that. It is part of the process, but it goes beyond that. It goes beyond that in terms of people's participation in decision making, in terms of the consultation with people. The essence of democracy is consulting people in terms of having them make decisions on very important issues. It is not a situation where because you have won a government or because you're the current administration and you have won the government, that by dint of the fact that you were elected, that you automatically can make decisions on behalf of people.
In his State of the Union address, President Barack Obama called on American people to fix our politics. Laying out his vision for the country's economic and social future, the president, who has often expressed frustration in his inability to work with a Republican-controlled Congress, said Americans would be able to achieve a more perfect union if they could break through the bitterness of partisan politics. Professor Greaves agrees.
Generally speaking, he has less power than a Dr. Keith Mitchell or Dr. Kenny Anthony or Mr. Brown in Antigua, because the Congress and the Senate, they virtually can squeeze you in terms of the decisions that you can make. And that has been his difficulty on certain decisions, whether it is immigration, whether it is healthcare, which he fortunately had to pass, whether it is on the gun legislation and so on, in terms of the extending the background checks, things of that nature. So when a Dr. Kenny Anthony or Dr. Keith Mitchell or others in the Caribbean can make decisions, he can't. It's difficult. And what they're saying is the powers of negotiation, is the powers of persuasion, is the powers of advocacy that you have to use. But in our system here, we can see that the change is needed as well.
Sources tell our newsroom that, like the Americans in November, Grenadians may also be heading to the polls in just under a year and a half. Eugenia Peters, GBN News.